All right, guys, I lost my intro video and I've been working on this stuff for a few days. The weather has been kind of cold and it's been raining, and today was actually really nice, but the wind is very, very bad. So I've been wanting to do body work on the car. I just haven't done anything to it. I've ended up doing more engine stuff. So I'm going to run you through some of the things, some of my reasoning, and some of the things I've made, that type of stuff. And explain myself, I guess, in a little bit of detail here. But anyway, I do have lots of little video clips, and I'm going to put them in after this video, but I'm going to kind of get you guys up to speed on what's going on. So I've been working on my wife's 55 four-door for a couple days. This is going to be her car, and I'm trying to make a nice a car to look original. I'm not making it original. I'm making it to look original. It's the Resto Mod. I've changed lots of things, but it's going to be stock height. It's going to have stock style wheels with the small hubcaps, stock style paint colors, stock style interior, you know, original size steering wheel, and all that kind of stuff. This car was originally a 6-cylinder, 3-speed standard on the column, and I'm changing it to a V8. But anyway, these cars, 55 Chevy, that was the first year that they come out with a small block Chevy in production. It was a 265 cubic inch engine. It did not have a spin-on oil filter on the bottom of the engine. They had external oil filters that went up here with a canister style filter that was replaceable. So it was 55 only. So there are a few things that I wanted to do on this engine, which I'm putting a 305 HO from a Monte Carlo SS in it because I had the engine here. And I'm putting a turbo 350 3-speed transmission in it. I've already changed the rear end out to a 10-bolt that has 308 gears in it, so it should be very highway friendly. Anyway, this car is not going to be any performance oriented at all. It's just going to be a stock cam, stock engine, just, you know, dressed up a little bit. Now, I'm trying to pull off the original 265 look, so there are a few things, which I've changed some things, but there are some few key components on the engine that has to, it's important to me to have them on here, so I've kind of had to go out of my way a little bit and change a few things, so I'll run you through that. Now, on the 265s for 55, you get a 2-barrel or a 4-barrel carburetor. So the 2-barrel air cleaners are completely different than a 4-barrel air cleaner. This is a 4-barrel air cleaner, but I believe this is probably 57. The 55, 56, 57 air cleaners do look the same. There are subtle differences, but they're so subtle I'm not sweating the details, you know what I mean? It's like snout length and that type of stuff. Which I could go in here and modify this snorkel and get rid of this piece right here, and it would really look 55-ish, and I still may do that, but I don't really need to, you know what I mean? I'm just trying to get that overall look, like when the hood's up, somebody walks by that knows the cars will be like, hey, that's original. But, you know, it's not, of course. But anyway, the air cleaner was the biggest component to me that is very important to have. These air cleaners are very, very tall. It does have hood clearance. It's going to have plenty of clearance off the bottom of it. But anyway, I did have to modify it because I did drop it down just a little bit further because I'm going to be running a spacer, phenolic spacer, so I don't have any, you know, percolating problems in the fuel bowl, you know, vapor lock stuff with this ethanol that's in the fuel nowadays. But anyway, I don't have the phenolic spacer in there, so I use a little bit of spacer, so I'll have my height. But anyway, so this was originally an oil bath air cleaner, meaning it doesn't have a paper filter in it. You would pour oil in it. And, you know, if you ever had a bad accident and you rolled the car over, the oil would come out and could cause a fire, especially if your battery's arcing and sparking. So not a real good design, you know what I mean? So what I ended up doing was I modified the inside of it for a filter, and I do have a video clip of that. But anyway, I'm just trying to run you all through some of my reasoning here, and then I've got something that I did not show any video footage on. Some guys are going to think it's kind of stupid, but I don't really care. I'm not building a car for them. I'm building a car for me and my wife. So this was another one of them key components that, to me, it needed to be on the car, on the engine, to make it look original. Now, these cars originally had glass bowl round fuel filters that went up here on the fuel line, the metal fuel line that went from the pump to the carburetor. I had an original 55, and that fuel filter seeped fuel. It wasn't a super bad leak, but it seeped. Not a good combination. I don't want to smell fuel all the time, and I don't want an underhood fire. So I ended up changing the seal and the filter element and put it in there, and it still seeped a little bit. Now, I remember another time I did a car, and I bought a whole new reproduction AC stamped fuel filter with the new glass bowl filter, and everything was all brand new, and it seeped. So I have zero confidence in those filters. Zero. Now, I know there's guys out there and be like, well, I have had one on there for 30 years. I ain't had no problems. Well, good for you. I haven't had luck from them, and I want it on the car, but I don't want it to be operable. So what I'm going to do on this setup is I'm going to bend a hard fuel line to go up into the carburetor, but I'm going to be putting a filter inside that Edelbrock. I've got the part number found, and it's in my cart. I've got a bunch of stuff at Summit in the cart. But anyway, I'm going to be putting a rock-style filter in this carburetor, and it is a 40 micron filter. And if you do any research or know your stuff, like especially Holley, they recommend between your pump and your carburetor at least a 40 micron filter in line there. So I don't want to put one of those, you know, billet style fittings or filters with the AN fittings and hose and all that kind of crap on there. I did that on my hardtop. And I don't want to put an inline little plastic clear filter with rubber hose pieces and all that kind of crap. So that's what I'm going to do with that route. But anyway, I'm going to be having a filter in the carburetor, so I don't really need anything in line. But to me, I needed the glass bowl filter. So I had an old reproduction AC fuel filter here. So I ended up modifying it. So again, this is just something to help pull off the look, to make this thing look like a 265. So what I ended up doing was I actually had to drill this out bigger for the fittings, and I drilled and tapped it to 1/4 inch NPT so these fittings would go in there. These go in and tighten down, but I ended up drilling this all the way through. This is one solid piece of fuel line all the way through here. So this will not be used as a filter. This is fake. So in order to make that kind of look like fuel, which kind of really didn't pull it off in a way, but I ended up masking off the outside of that glass housing, and I painted the inside of that with some gold pearl paint I had mixed with clear to make it really transparent. Now right here in the shade, it just looks like gold paint. And when I hold it up to the light, that kind of looks like fuel in there, because you can see that filter element up there. But underneath it, that looks like fuel. So anyway, this is not the fuel line I'm using, but I am going to get a new piece, and it's going to be silver fuel line. I'm not using this green stuff, but anyway, I'm going to bend that to come out of the, out of the carb to go all the way down behind the alternator and down to that fitting. But that filter will be right in there somewhere in there. And it's just fake. It's just to pull off a little bit of the look. It's a little bit of detail. It's a little silly, but to me, it was one of the important components. To me, the front oil fill tube was important to have on it. These Performer RPM Edelbrock intakes have this. You have to hole saw it open, but that's designed for that. And I did it on my hardtop. The Chevrolet scripted valve covers, the factory 4-Bell air cleaner, and that glass bowl fuel filter. That's the major components to me to pull off a little bit of that original look. However, I'm going to go a little bit further. So what I have here, this is almost a little bit of a disappointment. This is a canister style external fuel filter. Oil filter, I'm sorry. Oil filter. This come off a 55 Buick I had, and I cannot find the lid for this. And I think I ended up giving it away in a whole bunch of parts I gave away years ago to a friend of mine. There was a whole bunch of totes of little small parts, and I think that lid is in there. But anyway, I can't find the lid, so I've got to try to locate a lid. If any of you guys have a lid, let me know. I don't need the bolt or the nut thing. I just need the lid, because I'm going to completely modify this into a radiator coolant overflow tank. But I'm going to build some brackets, and originally they kind of went in about this location. But anyway, I'll restore this, blast it, and I'll paint it the colors like factory and put the reproduction decal on it. But this is going to be a coolant overflow tank, so it'll be mounted somewhere in here to give it that external oil filter look. So anyway, I'm going to have to build a bracket that'll bolt to the engine, to bolt to this, and weld it to it and all that kind of stuff. I'll have to weld a fitting in the bottom of that for you know, the line from the radiator to go to it, and then I'll also have to put a vent tube in it so it can breathe. But that's what that is going to be. But if you have a lid, let me know. But anyway, guys, that's just some of the major components that I wanted to pull off that look. Now, of course, I'm going to have an HEI distributor in it, an Edelbrock carburetor. Now, I will paint the intake manifold the engine color. When I go in to paint everything, the intake will be painted with it. But I do long water pump stuff. I like long water pump stuff better. The alternator is more firmly mounted than having your generator hanging out here and doing this stuff while it's sitting there running. But that's an AC compressor, by the way. But anyway, I like the long water pump stuff, which I always put my radiators in the 6-cylinder position, which is out in front of the core support, and then I run long water pump stuff. And the reason is, if the water pump ever goes out on it, I can walk into about any parts store and get that water pump. The short water pumps, they usually have to order them in. So I've just always been a long water pump guy. Now, I did decide on the exhaust manifolds, I'm not going to run these. I am going to try to find a set of 305 exhaust manifolds. And the reason is, they look very, very similar to the 265 manifolds. Very similar. So I am now on the hunt for a set of 305 manifolds. But that'll also help pull off the look. But, and again, I'm not going for 100% original under the hood. I just want, you know, a lot of key features on this. It'll pull off the look for me. And I kind of try to do that on my hardtop. I tried to make it look original with the valve covers, the front oil fill, and the air cleaner, which I modified this one into a cold air system and stuff. But, you know, this car, I wanted to try to make it look a little bit more like a legit 265. So anyway, I've got some video clips where I made some throttle linkage stuff. I remade the arm, kickdown bracket for the kickdown for the Turbo 350 to work like it's supposed to. And I've just been having a lot of fun, man. I've had a lot of fun because I have not spent any money so far. And I've modified the air cleaner. There's actually a K&N style air filter inside that, so it's like an air filter inside of an air filter. So this is no longer an oil bath, it is an air filter. I built a bracket to help hold this stationary so this part doesn't spin. I put a piece of tubing in here, steel tubing, and welded it in and ground it so it's clearance for the fuel line to come out. I put a drop base in the bottom of the air cleaner base. I tried to get that air cleaner down a little bit lower. But anyway, I've got some video clips, so here you go. But if I don't say it in the last video clip, thanks for watching. All right, so I'm working on the kickdown bracket for the 350 turbo transmission for my wife's 55 four-door. So I actually had two of these kickdown brackets, and this is pretty much what it looks like stock. Has a spot for the vacuum line for the power brakes, and then it has a little tab back here for the factory plug wire holder, whatever you want to call it, retainer. So what I did was I cut those pieces off, and I cut them out a little wide, and then I used vice grips there, and I basically pulled it around and then went back and used a roll-lock disc and smoothed it all up with a Scotch-It disc and everything. But anyway, now it has this rolled edge just like factory all the way around. And I'm gonna do a little bit more finish work with this little mini roll-lock here, but my Scotch-It disc that I've had on here, the whole edge is gone, so it's not getting in here and cleaning this up, so I've got to go get another one out of the box here in a minute. But you can kind of see, even though this is pretty greasy, you can kind of see the rolled edge here and here. So, you know, had I just chopped it off, it would have had a rolled edge and then flat and then rolled edge. And the thing about the rolled edge is it makes it it makes it stronger. So this will pretty much mount at the rear of the intake manifold, and it's kind of cool because I actually had a different one here. I've got a whole bunch of these laying around, but I had another one here that this slot wasn't very big, and it wouldn't clear this raised runner on the intake there, but this one actually clears it. So this will actually bolt on just like that. And I had luckily I had the kick down tab here. I've got it put on the carb that goes onto this. This is not connected to the transmission because I don't even have a valve body in the transmission right now, but so that's a plan. Now I got to go dig out 2 studs, get them cleaned up, and I'll probably paint them silver or something, but anyway, I need a couple of studs to go on there. I may cut a couple of pieces of stainless all thread and use a couple of nuts, and then stick that on top of the nuts and use 2 more nuts. I just don't know yet. I've actually got to find out if I have some studs here, but I'm just going to use like some OEM studs like it would have had from the factory back here, instead of just, you know, when the intake's not bolted on yet, sticking that on there and trying to torque everything down together. I don't want to do that. I want this to come off separately. Well, it's a good thing I don't mind fabricating things. So I tried to do the kick down cable on the back of the engine, on the back of the intake, and it's actually interfering with the throttle linkage, the mechanical linkage arm right here. It's actually hitting, like up in here somewhere. So I decided I'm going to cut that right there where that line is, and I've got this piece marked out, and this is the same gauge metal as this. And it's kind of funny because I have already cut this and modified this. This was from a 6-cylinder car and I turned it into a V8, so I get to modify it again. But I'm going to cut this out, clean it all up the edges, butt weld it, grind it, and that's actually going to change the angle, and it's going to gain me just enough clearance. The TV cable's not a problem. Yay! All right, so the mock-up's done. So I ended up cutting out a new piece, butt welded it on, metal finished it out. I'll prime it and then block it and then paint it. So anyway, I took the original bracket that I trimmed off and bent the edges and rolled everything and smoothed up, and I ended up having to extend it, which ended up working out pretty good because it's actually now double adjustable. Doesn't look the greatest having all that hardware on it. So what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to put some serrated stainless steel flange nuts on these. Probably, you know, thin down the bolts or use ARP bolts or something. I'll make it look a little better. That's just nuts and bolts and stuff that I had laying around here, so that's not what I'm going to finally use. But so I had to extend that up a little bit, so I just used some pieces of steel and cut out some straps and drilled holes in it. But that'll end up working out, and the car will be able to downshift off the transmission like it needs to. I can get full throttle and I'm away from the firewall, and in case I don't have enough adjustment by pushing down on this lever here to pull this part in and out of it, I can do this or that. So I've kind of got double adjustment here that I can do. I was going to weld this to this, but I'm going to leave it that way and just have hardware in it. So I could put the hardware, you know, with the bolt heads going down that way and the nuts on the bottom. I'd look a little cleaner, but I've got extra ARP bolts I'll use. But I ended up using studs with nuts on them on the intake. That way the intake can be torqued down like it needs to be, and then the bracket can be put on afterwards. But so I think that's pretty cool. Everything's straight, it's in line, and it has clearance back here by making that curve around, and that cable's not up against that, which none of this is tight yet. I don't have this nut right here is not tight on that lever, so that is actually a little bit limber. And if I need to, I can actually bend this arm a little bit if I need to either way, but it looks to me like it's going to clear just fine. So now I'm going to work on a carburetor spring bracket. This is one that I found in my box. It's just one of them store-bought chrome things. I like the look of it because it's, you know, got holes in it that are stepped and it kind of curves and stuff. It looks kind of nice, but I'd have to have a really long spring and I don't want that, so I may end up making one. And you got to keep in mind, guys, I don't have the money to spend on buying stuff. I could have went in and bought a kickdown bracket, and I probably could have bought some different cable style throttle linkage. I have a lot of steel here. I've got a full bottle of MIG gas, and I've got a new roll of MIG wire. So I can make all this stuff, and it's not costing me a thing. That's what I enjoy doing, is making things for nothing. You know, if I already got the stuff here. So works for me. With the DA just a little bit, but I think by the time I prime that and block it, it should be good. I do have to finish welding all the way around here where I've put a drop base in here to get the air cleaner a little bit lower. So I did a little bit of welding on it, and then I stopped because I don't want to warp it to crap. So anyway, when that's all done, I'll go in there and grind that with the edge of the grinder. Just get down in there and just kind of work it a little bit, and then I'll put some 2-part seam sealer up in there and smooth it out with my finger, and it'll be good enough because it's underneath. You're never going to see it. So I'm happy with that. So that is a radius for the fuel line to go into this carburetor. So that'll go on pretty much like that. And I clearanced it for the fuel line to come out of there, which I'm going to bend a hard line out. I built a bracket to hold this air cleaner base in its position, because these things they'll just spin. You know, it'll spin into the fuel line probably. So I bent up a little bracket here. And it'll actually go on. I'm going to use a long carburetor stud back here, so when it's bolted on, this will slip on top of that nut, and then I'll double nut. I'll basically have a nut on top of this too, but that slips on there like that. I've got a lock washer and an acorn nut for that. And then basically another little nut to put on here. Anyway, that's just a bracket to hold the air cleaner from walking on there. And then what's going inside this factory oil bath is one of these that I got off eBay during the winter. This was very, very inexpensive, like 25 bucks, and it has a K&N style washable element. But this will actually go inside that air cleaner, and I'll run a wing nut down here to that. And then the lid will go on there with another wing nut on top. So it pretty much goes just like that. I've got just enough air cleaner studs sticking out. I was actually thinking about using this because I've had it in my, it's been in my toolbox for probably 20 years, 25 years. And I thought about using it, but it kind of takes away from the original look. So I think I'm just going to put a standard lug nut on it. Or not a lug nut, a wing nut. But anyway, when I repaint the air cleaner black, I'll put the original, you know, the decal on it that says it's oil bath or whatever. But it ended up working out pretty good. I got a nice little notch for the fuel line. I built a bracket, kind of got the air cleaner. It's almost done. I still got to finish welding all that base on there, but so all the linkage works. It doesn't hit the air cleaner. Nothing binds up. Before, the air cleaner was just way too tall, so that's why I chopped bottom out of it and put in one out of a drop base. You know, just one of them universal overseas air cleaners. I've got a bunch of air cleaner bases laying around, so that's what I used. So this fuel line that I've got in here is, I've just got it in there hand tight, but this is actually bent, so it's supposed to be up a little bit. That fuel line's bent a little bit. But anyway, I'll bend it and it'll come out and go this way. I might drop it down just a little bit and over this way.